All right, so what we do is we take advantage of those employee badges that everybody is using in the facilities to get into the building, time clocks, those type of things. We don't change anything on the badge, but we push that security to the HMI panels and to the PLC systems. So from an HMI perspective, I walked into many facilities that are usually wide open, and if there's a password, it's a very simple password that everybody knows. I've walked into a facility and I've seen passwords taped to the front. So from a security perspective, an ability for someone who's qualified to use that workstation is always not the best idea. From an audit perspective, there's no record of who's doing what because the workstation is wide open. And when you look at the login, it's a bunch of function keys you got to press. You got to do a username, you got to do a password. What we do is with our readers, our devices here, we enable the capture of the ID number from the badge. We don't change anything on the badge, but we have an algorithm in the reader that creates an encrypted password. And also all those function keys you saw me pressing are also written into the script of that reader. So when I tap this badge, you'll see that the username and password is automatically pushed into the panel, and then the rights and responsibilities of that user are presented to the user. So this user could only start a pelleter. A different user could walk up, tap his badge. He's going to have different rights and responsibilities, and he gets different screens. So you see you're able to differentiate between the users. From an audit perspective, that's very beneficial, but from an operational perspective, you're able to control who's doing what, whether they're qualified or not to do that. Another example of one of the functionalities we have is this Sonar device. It detects presence that I'm standing in front of the workstation. So an operator's working in the workstation, he decides to step away, and he's still logged into the workstation. The Sonar device will detect that presence and I'll basically log that user out of the screen. So when I step away here, you'll see it'll turn red and the screen will log out. And that's what happens there. So this system works on both SE and ME. This is a Factory Talk View ME system. This is a Factory Talk View SE system. So here I'll show you an example of the SE system logging in. Tap that badge similar to the ME, and I'm logged in also. Now, both of these are local accounts to each of the panels. If you want to do more of a centralized solution, we would work with our Factory Talk View, our solution, our Ethernet IP solution, right? Power or Ethernet solution. So over here, this reader, you're able to sync up with a PLC and create a database in the PLC. So as opposed to having local databases, you can now have a centralized databases that could be distributed to all your HMI panels. So when our user taps in here, the PLC will pick up that code that's coming from the credential from the reader, and then in a lookup table, look up all the different accounts and push those accounts out to the panels to log in. Other options you could do, for example, is control processes. Let's say, for example, you want to start a mixer or a blender or those type of things. Instead of pushing a button or turning a key, you could use the reader to do that. For example, I had a paint manufacturer that was doing 12 bad batches a week, $5,000 a batch, $2.5 million a year that they were losing on mistakes because people were not qualified to start that process. So what they did is they put 92 readers in, and after doing that, they went down to 1 bad batch a week, and they were able to track that back to the user that had done it because they had that ID number. They no longer had that problem anymore. Now here's an example of how it works. When I tap this badge, this user does not have rights. I tap this badge, this user does not have rights. He gets a red light. So the maintenance guy comes up, he has rights. So you're able to control who could do what based on that ID badge. Another quick example here of a customer that was having an issue who thought they weren't having an issue. I had a wastewater company. They only had 4 panels. They said, there's only 5 of us working here. We don't think we have a security problem, so we're okay with leaving our panels wide open. He called me a week later saying, you know what, our filtration system went down. When we investigated, we found out that a truck driver started playing with the open panel, turned off the filtration system for the city. They ended up ordering 4 readers. They set up 5 accounts on each workstation, and they solved their security problem.
4 truck drivers, am I right? So that's interesting. So basically, I mean, you're solving an issue of both security and control and safety, right? Yes. I mean, there's a safety element to this as well, right?
Sure. From a safety perspective, you're ensuring that only qualified people are working on the machine. Only qualified people who know what they're doing, who have been trained to do it, have been certified to do it, are actually doing that work. From an audit perspective, you want to make sure your audit records are all up to date, and those people that are trained to do the job and make sure that they're logging in. So from a record keeping perspective, it gives you that advantage by having those records and being able to identify each user based on the ID number of their badge.
So how do you get a facility and customer to pull the trigger to get this in their facility?
Well, we usually talk to the customer about what their current problems are. Sometimes they don't realize they have a problem until they have a problem, just like that wastewater company, until something happens. Hopefully we don't get to that point, but in the long run, or early on, I would say, you say, well, what are you doing now, and where do you plan to be in the future? Do you want to have that control? Do you need to have that control? I mean, with all the things that are happening now, with the botnets that are coming out, you want to make sure that your workstations are locked down and only authorized users are accessing those solutions and those processes. So that's what you got to start thinking about now. And a lot of customers are starting to upgrade from their HMI panels to the newer HMI panels, also their PLCs. That's the time you want to start looking at those and adding the readers with them.
Awesome, fantastic stuff. Thanks, Juan. Hey, and you can check out RFIDeas online, or if you still have time at Ryodom, you're here live in Portland.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.